And so today too, so we're going to talk a little bit about like applications in the cloud and how to size things and really help you understand, because sometimes when you have a device that's on-premise, you don't understand that it's different when you provision into the cloud. And we'll talk about that today, okay? So the goal here, really, to be frank with you, is we're going to go through this, but ultimately, what we'd like to do with you after this call is just set up another call with you, just an individual, like a private session, where we can just discuss and talk about what you're trying to do, what roadblocks you're trying to get through, in the very similar fashion of this type of session here. So I just want to kind of, at the end of this, we're going to have like what are some next steps and how to look at things. But ultimately, our goal is to talk to you individually afterwards, and say, okay, what can we do? Because we can help you with licensing, we can help you with discounting, and ultimately maybe help you with your total provisioning process. Okay, great. Let's get started here. I think you could all see my screen. Now, your screens are a little bit different because your screens have been optimized the way that we look at it from the pros at Microsoft. So I'm going to just show you, this is when you look at my screen, you see exactly what you normally see when you open up the Azure portal. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to show you here is actually how to change it to manipulate it the way that the pros actually use the portal. And the first thing you're going to do, and go ahead and follow me, do this on your side so you can, just for muscle memory. On the top right hand corner, there's a little gear icon, right? And I'm going to click on the gear icon, and then I'm going to scroll all the way over to the left where it says appearance. Okay, and when I click on appearance, it's going to come up to appearance, like what do I want to come? So I'm going to click on docked really quickly, and then I like to click on a theme, okay? Because I want to have contrast, and then I just go down to apply. Now you can do this yourself, unapply or apply it back in, but let me go ahead and click on apply. Now let me just show you really quickly. The reason why we do this is we want to have our menu bar on the left-hand side, right? See the black area, and we want to have a contrast. They call it blue. I've never understand why this is the color blue. I think somebody had a bad screen, or they're colorblind. So I see black. I don't know if anybody else sees blue, but I see black. But anyways, there's a contrast, and I want to have my production in white. In my production area, but I want my menu because this production area changes all the time. So I just want to show you that. Okay, so let's just take a quick tour. On the top right-hand corner, mine says info at Azure Direct. Yours is going to say ACIE 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whoever you are. I just want to remember where this is in your naming convention, ACIE, whatever number you have. We're going to use that later down in the road, okay, over here. Now, what I want you to do is come over to the left. There's a little question mark button, okay? We're going to click on that really quickly. Now, the reason why we're doing this is this is a place that you need to go. If you're not working with a CSP partner, you go for your help desk ticket right there. Okay, so we know what that is, but that's not what I'm showing you. What I want to show you is something that's a lot more important. Okay, and this little thing that says View Service Health. If you can go ahead and click on View Service Health, I'm going to show you this. So what this is actually, this is pretty good. This happens. This is actually excellent that this has happened. Every now and again, there's a service health issue that's affecting maybe your region that you're working in, right? And the reason why you want to go here is because if something affects your region, let's say, a whole data center region's down for some reason, your VM went down, you're going to need to create some type of incident report for compliance, just for your own records, right? And we all know that having to create your own really kind of stinks, right? Just the top. So Microsoft does a great job at reporting these things. So if you click on this first one, Azure AD Service and Management, what I love about this, it gives us the whole summary that you can now just download quickly and paste into your compliance report. It tells you what's going, what is impacted, summary of impact between your customers using Azure AD, experience failures when performing any service management operations. It's just a good place to know, okay, where this is and how to get an incident report if something is affecting. Now, you'll probably hear it in the news first that, oh, an Office 365 is down or before, and then you'll go here, or somebody's going to be, blowing up your phone saying, why is our server down? And you can go here and you can find out real quickly. Okay, now if your server's down and there's nothing in here, it might be your problem. So we got to figure out what's going on with that. But just want to show you the View Service Health. Okay, Next
And
thing I
as a
want to show.
reminder, Azure provides a great platform for all of these services, but they don't provide any reliability or availability guarantees, right? Their services will do. You need to build in the same redundancy that you might build in an on-prem. So think of it as like a single VMware host or a single Hyper-V host. That's what they're providing. And obviously, if you want, hardware fault tolerance as an example, you'd build two of them right across two different hosts. If you wanted some disaster recovery capability, you'd build it across data centers. So all of that can be built, but it's not built by default. So Azure definitely has standards and SLAs on some of their services, but you still need to build for the redundancy around that. So just a reminder.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And we'll touch on that today in availability sets. We'll talk about that. The next button I want you to just quickly look at is the notification. It's a little bell. We use this all the time. This is pro tip number one. Whenever we're deploying things, sometimes it takes 5, 10, 15 minutes or a half hour. We'll go over here and it'll tell us where it is in the progression, and it'll also enable us to go straightly to the resource. So it's kind of cool. Now, directly to the left is go two buttons over. It's the button with the screen with the arrow, right? Go ahead and click on that. Now, what that is, that's Cloud Shell. So there's 3 ways of deploying things to Azure. Okay, one is through PowerShell or through the portal, which we're going today. They have wizards, kind of prevent you from creating a Frankenstein monster, okay, worth of a VM. The second way is through PowerShell or Bash, and this is using your Cloud Shell. And this is when you know how to actually, commands, right, to connect to AD. This is for intermediate to advanced that know the language, okay, but it's actually faster than the portal. For example, I deployed 15 resource groups the other day. It took me 2 minutes because I knew the commands, I knew the whole code. It was beautiful. If I went to the portal, it would have taken me about an hour, along with all the policies, right, that are necessary. Third way is through just your CMD or Windows PowerShell. You actually download the Azure component to it, right, and then you can connect and actually do it on your desktop. So you don't actually have to be in the portal to deploy. Those are 3 different ways. Just really quickly want to show you that. Let's go ahead and click exit out of that. Okay. Now our first thing that we're going to do here is just type in the search bar. What I want to show you here, one of the most powerful search bars there is around. So I want you to type in 3 letters, please, for me, as we're going to be looking for availability sets. Type in AVA, Apple, Victor, Apple, okay? And what that's going to do here is it's going to show us 3 things, okay? So first, anything that has those first letters in an AVA is going to kind of come up, or suggestions. Now, services on the left-hand side is what Microsoft has built. On the right-hand side is Marketplace, okay? You might be asking what that is. Well, that's what Microsoft, when they started out, they said, we're going to be platform agnostic or OS agnostic, and we're going to open it up, right, for developers to come in and create stuff that's going to help make our stuff go faster, quicker, better. So this is what the Marketplace is. You might be confused. Sometimes you're like, what is services and what is Marketplace? Now, these most of them cost a little bit of money, so be careful. But what I also like about this search bar is that we get documentation, based on maybe what we're trying to look at, right? So I kind of like that. So it's just a great tool, the search bar. We actually deploy things that today we're gonna do that. Okay, we're gonna use the search bar. Okay. Now on the left-hand side, I'm gonna give you my next pro tip. Okay, I'm gonna look at the menu bar. In the very top of the menu bar, in the top left-hand corner of your screen, you see create a resource, right? Now, go ahead and click on that if you want. This will be the first and last time you'll click on it. Our guidance is not to use this because somebody came in here, bright idea, decided to put all things together here, the Marketplace and regular stuff. So it becomes kind of confusing to find things. Okay. So instead of going to that button, I'm going to show you the button that we normally go to when we get that. We actually go to what's called All Services. So all the services on the left-hand side, upper left, it looks like a hamburger. Okay. Go ahead and click on that for me. Okay. So the reason why we like all services here, okay, is because it's actually based on categories. So if we're looking at compute resources, oh, okay, easy to find. If we're looking for networking, oh, okay, it's all put in categories, and these are the services that Microsoft provides. Okay, these are not the Marketplace, so it's easier to find this. Okay, but also like today, like I'm going to say, hey, everyone go to all services and then go to virtual networks. And then go to virtual machines, okay? So we're going to show you it's an easy way of deploying things, okay? So that's really
the popular ones that's exactly the ones that are most popular, right? I think the virtual machine, storage accounts, and networking, or virtual networks as they call them here. Those three kind of entitle them the most, but you're going to see 240 different services here, right? I parallel these with like ingredients in a kitchen. Some things are great, you kind of look around and you can see, oh, Citrix virtual desktop, you could get lost in here, right? You could, there's a lot of stuff. Thank goodness for search bars. Thanks goodness for categorization. But know that you could build a temple here. But with the Cloud 101 that we're kind of starting with here, we're going to start with the basics, right? The virtual machine, storage accounts. I think you are getting into availability groups, which is great. I'd call that that's 200 level stuff and virtual networks. So, but you see firewalls down there. I mean, there's nothing here that isn't present in a local data center that's really advanced, right? It's just a lot of this stuff you might not have, right? Cloud Simple services or Kubernetes, right? Anyone have some Kubernetes, and availability sets? Just there's some advanced stuff out here, and we're just going to stay with the simple stuff.
Yep. So the categories there. So let's look at one other one below that. This is the waffle, the green waffle. Go ahead and click on that. Now on your screen, okay, you shouldn't have anything in there, or maybe you have one resource group. Okay, but I'm going to tell you the reason why you do it. But on my screen, I've got everything that's in here. So I got the global admin, right? So I got all the stuff that we have that we're working on. This is like, let me describe this. This is like the toy box when you're 12 years old. Okay, all your toys since you're like 6 and 5, and remember that toy box? It's got every toy in there. Parts don't match to what, you don't know, right? This is basically the way you look at it. This is the catch-all, right, of places. But you can categorize them inside of resource groups or locations or subscriptions. You can kind of do that. Not a problem. But good way of looking at that. But now what I want to do is actually get into resource groups. This is the fundamental first step, and we're right on time. We're starting right at 8:30, which is awesome. Go ahead and everyone click on resource groups. Okay. Now I'm going to pause here. Please, this is open for questions. We got a smaller group here, so please, if I'm going too fast or too slow, or you have a question, let me know. Okay, so this is fundamental first step that we have here, and this is called resource groups. Now, can anyone here tell me, maybe go to the chat window and type in, and I'll give it a few minutes, because I want to just see what you think, and then I'll tell you, tell me what a resource group is, or why it's the fundamental first step. Okay, now I'm gonna, or just say, please explain. Type in, please explain, if you want me to tell you in layperson's terms. That makes it very easy to understand. So I'll just give it a minute, see if people can type in an answer of, fundamentally, what is a resource group and why, or why do we start with one? Let's see what type of response, if anyone can give me their thought.
I won't type in an answer.
Okay, so hold on. We got Alexi. Okay, we got some typing going on. Now you can also just say, please explain, sure. Set of resources. Okay, set of resources to be easily managed. I like that. It's a group of resources to be kind of Mike, I like that one, man. I like that. Okay. So how I describe it is think of you're going to be building a skyscraper. Okay. And the skyscraper is the main thing, right? But what do you need to build a skyscraper? You need people. You need trucks, you need cement, you need materials, right? You need the steel, the concrete, right? You need some construction offices, right? You need those trailers, right? You need cranes, you need bulldozers, right? You need all this stuff. Well, imagine if you're building this skyscraper and you have all that stuff, but you don't have a fence around it. Okay, there's no fence. Well, you could do that, right? But what are the problems with that? Okay, the problems are theft, right? Theft, that could be a problem. People that get access to your build site that shouldn't, and then we're going to talk about that today, okay? Or tagging, right? Like what resource is going to this? What if there's a construction site right next to it? There's no fence there either. Holy Moses, wait a minute. Okay. So really what a resource group is just a fence around your skyscraper. Okay. So inside of Azure, if we wanted to look about Azure, since today we're deploying virtual data or Windows Data Center 2019, we're building a fence around it. Okay. And we're going to build in the virtual machine. However, there's a bunch of things that we need to make this virtual machine work, such as a virtual network, a gate, right? An availability set, right? A recovery services group, right? There's just a bunch of things, a storage disk, right? We have a lot of things that we have to put in there, but we want to put it in one resource group. Okay, it's much easier to manage. Okay, now we also want to have some policies in place. And I'll tell you a story. What could, I mean, I guess the result of, let's say you didn't have a fence and your competitor sent one of their minions and they went inside and they snuck into the construction site office and they called up the cement company and said, hey, send me 200 trucks of cement, right? Okay. And they say, well, how are you going to pay for it? And you're like, bill it to the company, click. Okay. Right. The guy walks off. And then what happens? 200 trucks of cement comes in, but you already poured the foundation. Holy Moses, right? Well, it's the same thing in Azure. Okay. If you don't put in policies in place, like the correct policies, and you don't like set things up correctly to start, okay, you could be in some serious trouble. Okay. And that's what we're going to be talking about. So resource group, you want to put some policies in place to limit. Now, let me tell you another story recently that just happened. One of the biggest mistakes that most partners make or people make, okay, is they give access to the whole Azure portal to every one of their people. Okay, so let's say they have a 10-person team, right? And they know 3 people are working on a SQL server, 3 people are working on maybe a data center server, and 3 people are working on artificial intelligence or data analytics, right? The biggest mistake most people make, and this is pro tip, okay, is they allow all those 10 people to have access to the whole Azure portal to do whatever they want, okay? And then people think, well, I have global admin access and they only have a contributor role. It doesn't matter. You never want to do that, okay? You don't want to let them have access. And the second biggest mistake, and this is what you should all take away from today, is you should limit the type of virtual machines that anyone can order. This is just like the cement truck idea, right? You don't want to have somebody come in and think, oh man, I need 60 CPUs and 800 gigs of RAM because, man, I want to see this workload go fast. I want to crush this thing, right? And this crazy disk, because that could cost you what, $12,000, $13,000 a month. So you don't want to have people do that. Okay, now I'll give you a real world scenario. One of our past clients that we talked to, who called me up almost crying, said, hey, I got a real problem. I said, what is it? And they said, well, we got $900 a month in our average spend, and all of a sudden we have $14,000. We've got a bill for 14 grand. So what happened? Like somebody got into our into our system. They hacked it in. We didn't have any policies in place, and they spun up a Bitcoin mining service for 2 days. It cost $12,000. They had to pay it. Okay. That's the sobering thought about not putting in certain policies in place to make sure that people can't do stuff. I would like to say, like, in the concrete analogy, the guy says, I want 150 machines or trucks of concrete, and then the person at the concrete store says, hey, your limit is 4 because it's been set. That's the idea. Now, does that make sense to people? Give me a thumbs up or give me a yes or ask us. I think Mike's asking a question here. But I just want to make sure that that makes sense. So you only want to give access to resource groups. Okay. Now you see on your session right now, okay, you only have one resource group. You only have one because I created it that way, and there's policies. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and click into your resource group. I'm going to go into my info at RSG. That's going to be my sandbox. Okay. Info. Okay, so for some, yeah, I need to get rid of this. I'll go to my different one. Okay, there we go. That one's clean. Okay, so when you go here, I want to show you something. Okay, so instead of allowing people to get access, okay, to everything, what you do is you create a resource group, and then you go over here that says access control, identity access management, IAM. Okay, Click on that. And this is where you would add somebody here. You go add a role assignment, and you would click contributor. Pretty simple, okay? And then next, you would add somebody, you would select members. And for example, I know I'm going a little fast here, but I just want to make it, this is just for example purposes. I would select somebody and I would give them access to this resource group. Now, the reason why we do this is because when they open the portal, they only have access to that resource group. They don't have access to everything else. So very important. Okay, this is, you want to keep people in areas where they're supposed to be. Like you don't want to have, do you want to have your construction worker be able to go to HQ and go straight up to the CEO's office, walk into the CEO's office, sit down at the CEO's desk and eat lunch? Probably not. Right? I mean, or do you want, the construction worker service principal? What is a service principal? It's the main person that's actually, so where did you see that? Did you see that on Robert, where did you see service principal?
On the last screen, it said that you were on.
Okay, so I went to contributor. Oh, okay. So assign access to user, group, or service principal. It's I guess the way to describe that.
It's a service itself that might take advantage of that resource within the group. So it could be a SQL server, as an example, that might be taking advantage of that storage, something of that nature. I think that's the gist of it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yep.
And in addition to, roles-based access, I mean, think of this even within your own IT staff, right? You don't want your firewall folks necessarily with the capabilities to spin up servers, and vice versa, right? Server folks shouldn't be touching the firewall. So, just separation of, church and state, if you will, even within a resource group based on roles. So an extensive role-based access, policy would be logical for even a simple environment with a server, some storage, a firewall, and a network resource group perimeter. All of that stuff might have 4 different separate roles. And then the one thing I'll add is, and we're not using it here in lab because of the challenges with it, but all of these roles should have MFA set up on them, right? MFA is included. It's a portion of the Azure AD here, so no reason not to use it, and or bring your own MFA provider if you don't want to use Microsoft's.
So the next thing on top of that, and that kind of segues into policies. I want everyone to check where policies is, and I'm gonna put my highlight on my screen, so just make sure that you know where I'm going. Okay, it says policies. I want you to click on that, please. Click on policies, because I want to show you this. We're not going to create one today, but what you should see is that there's not allowed resource types or allowed virtual machine size. So Mike Rigsby, thank you, bud. Principle of least privilege. This is exactly what we're talking about. So number one, I have not allowed resources. So I mean, there's so many, right? But for you can't do a lot of these things because I prevented you to do that. You could do stuff, but I also prevented the size of the virtual machines that you're allowed to provision. Now I'm doing this actually here. This is at the subscription level, okay? But I would also, I mean, I would actually suggest that you did it at the subscription level, not just at the resource group level, because as a global admin, even if you allow somebody to come in somehow is outside the resource group, but you can do it at either one of those. So you can scope it out either which way. Okay. But so important. This is pro tip, like number 3. Okay. Set policies right as soon as you can. Okay. And then, allow virtual machine SKU sizes. This will stop because elasticity is awesome, but also dangerous. What if even one of your current people were like, oh yeah, my server here has this much, and since we're just bringing it up here, I'll go ahead and spin up a dev test machine that's as big as my server on-prem. You're like, whoa, take it easy. Hold on, you not understand. We don't do it that way. And so you want to be careful with that. You want to give people, but they can also request more stuff if they need it, right? Fundamental first steps. Okay, awesome. Thank you so much, everybody here. So I'm going to go ahead and click out of that. Okay, so now let's get into our next fundamental step, and that's going to be creating a virtual network. Okay, so let's go ahead and go to all services. Okay, now and then what I want us to do is scroll all the way over to the right. Okay, you got to go to all services all the way to the right. Now fundamentally, this is step 2. Okay, in what you're supposed to do. Okay, so I want everybody to go over to where top upper left-hand corner where it says create, and go ahead and push the plus section. Okay, we're going to create a new one, and then what's going to happen is going to open up another page. Now, pro tip number 4, in a lot of the docs.microsoft.com, it'll say open up another blade. You're like, what the hell is a blade? I'm going to tell you, a blade is a page. Don't ask me why somebody decided to do that. Maybe they watched Blade Runner and they're like, okay, hey, everyone, we're going to call these blades, right? Okay, fine. But now in these blades, though, they're wizards. So we go from left to right, okay? And then we go from top to bottom, okay? Really important that we do it that way. Okay, so now the reason why we're doing a virtual network is, one, we want to put a gate to that resource group, basically a gate to the virtual machine. Okay, we want to create an IP address. We want to create inbound and outbound security rules, possibly. So that's what we're doing. So very simple stuff here. Very first thing we're going to do is we want to make sure the subscription says Microsoft Azure. Okay. Next, we want to go to the resource group. Now, you're not going to see all these resource groups. Okay. What I want you to do is go down to yours. Okay. Info. So I'm going to go info RSG test. Okay. And then I'm going to give it a name. So it's going to be VN-01. Okay. Now, since we all have different resource groups, we can all have the same name. Okay, if we're all working in the same resource group, it would say no name is taken. But I like to put a -01 to next to a lot of things. It's easier to kind of see what to do with that. Okay, all right. So inside of the basics, we're cool here. Now let's go ahead and click on IP addresses. It's right next to basics. Okay. Now the cool thing here is Microsoft decided about 6 months ago, hey, a lot of folks we know that don't understand IP addresses, so we're just going to go ahead and assign you one, an IPv4, and they're going to assign you a subnet, which is kind of cool. However, it'll also make sure if you try to do something wrong, this is part of the wizard. If you try to create a Frankenstein IP address, it basically says, "Yo, no, sorry, you can't do it." Okay, it's not going to allow you to create a bad IP address. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and trash that. Okay, now after it's good, it'll give you a check mark, right? Okay, so that's good. And your default subnet, perfect. Leave that alone, no problem. All right, now let's go over to security. That's going to be the next one. Okay, now let's just pause here. We're going to leave everything default, but I want to tell you one thing. Okay, the DDoS protection standard. Okay. You already get DDoS protection anyways. This is a little bit of a misnomer. It should be advanced. It should be standard, always comes with it, right? But if you enable this, okay, the cost of DDoS protection standard is anywhere between $3,000 and $5,000 a month. Could be even higher depending on how much traffic you have. You gotta be careful. Now, when you enable this is when let's say you're doing a website, right? When your website, let's say you have 100,000 visitors or more. Okay, you're a target, okay, or you're a politically charged organization, and we have some out there. You could be part of one, right? You would want to enable that, right? Because it just gives you extra protection, right? It really spreads the attack out. It's like the spear, right? And comes in, it helps to divert and diversify, right? But be careful, costs a lot of money, okay? When you're at those ranges, though, the money is nominal because it's part of the security piece, it's part of your thing. But if you have a tiny website, tiny thing, it's not. Don't do it, okay? Because it's a lot of money. And you already get some cool DDoS protection there. All right, you can enable the firewall, bastion hosts. You can do that. All right. The next thing is tags. Now we're not going to go into tags today, but they're probably one of the next fundamental steps to understand. This is for cost justification. Okay, to be able to help justify, not just justify, but categorize things. Okay, but for the whole day today, we're not going to be doing tags. So simply just go to review and create. Okay, now the cool thing about this, when you were inside of Azure, when you go to review and create, you get a kind of validation. It says passed. It's always going to validate what you do. Now, if you do something wrong, it's going to come up with a little red dot next to the tab that you did, and you go back there and you fix it. Okay. Now when it says validation passed, go ahead and push the create button on the bottom left-hand corner. And it's going to be initializing deployment. So this is the first time that I'm going to need you to give me a sense of, and now if you're watching, give me a good to go as well, because that means you understood it. Okay. So right now, if you've gotten to this point, it says deployment in progress, give me a GTG. Okay. Eric's good. Okay. Martin's good. All right. Fantastic. Okay, cool. All right. Alexi, Gus, perfect. All right. Okay, we're good. All right. Thanks to everybody. Really appreciate it. Really do appreciate it. Okay. So virtual network. Okay, cool. Now, what's next? Okay. Well, this next thing is called availability set. Okay. And let's how will we get there? So remember we went to the search bar. Okay, search bar. Okay. Let's see. Does anyone have a problem? Actually, I'm going to pause here. So I want to see if anyone had a deployment unsucceeded. Just give it a second. Okay, we're good. All right, so let's go to the search bar and type in 3 letters, AVA, Apple, Victor, Apple. And the first one says availability sets. Let's go ahead and click on that. Okay, now on the upper left-hand corner, just like we did just a few seconds ago, we went to create. Now, Bruce said this earlier about redundancy. So Bruce, do you want to maybe talk a little bit about availability set and why it's a good idea, like fundamentally?
Azure, just like any other resource, has outages, right? They have unplanned outages and planned outages. And those planned outages, let's say that they're going to take, they've provided you notification that your, I don't know, your VMs will be interrupted at because they have to do some patching to the underlying hypervisors, and they need a 30-minute window on Friday night, right? They're going to provide you 2 weeks notice sort of thing. What are you going to do? What if you have a 24/7 operation and so forth? So availability set is for planned and unplanned outages, VMs, storage, and otherwise.
Yep, that's a perfect way of describing it. It's if it's on one rack and that rack is being updated, or there's a domain fault in that domain, power goes out, and you don't have an availability set, you're in trouble. Now, somebody asked a question: how much does this cost? Availability set is like pennies. Okay, when you get to like nickels is when you do an availability zone. But so it really is nominal, and it actually increases your SLA with Microsoft by 1.9 if you do this. Okay, so you should always put a virtual machine in availability set. Now, there's 2 things here. You have fault domains and update domains. These are important. So fault domains is saying, hey, if one of the racks goes down, it's getting pushed over, right? Redundancy. But update domains, a lot of people don't understand. Microsoft will, and the reason why we do 5 is at times Microsoft will do 3 updates to 3 different domains at the same time, right? So we want to make sure that we have multiples, right, so that we can get to. So very simple. This is very simple walkthrough. Very similar. Just go to your resource group. I'm going to info RSG test, and then we're going to give it a name. Okay, this is going to be AVA set -01, and I'll put this in the chat window just in case people forget. Okay. Region is West. Okay, or if it comes up East as yours, just leave it default. Okay, and then next we want to go to Advanced. We're not going to do anything in advanced, okay? We're not going to do anything in tags, and we're going to go straight to review and create. So it's going to run the final validation. We're going to get a validation passed, and then we're going to go straight to create. So click on that. Okay. All right, deployment is in progress. Cool. Okay, deployment is complete. That is very simple, right? It's a simple one. But now what we've done is now we've created some basic redundancy, okay? In the event that Microsoft has, there's a fault, power outage, or there's something. Now, what you could do is called availability zone, okay? And what that means is like saying, I want to spread my risk across multiple data centers in an Azure region. So there's regions, 48 data center regions around the world with 172 data centers. So it's saying, okay, I want to spread my risk, okay? But, you could do that, And you get another 9 if you do zones, by the way. But interestingly enough. Okay. So we have resource group, we've done the virtual network, and we've done the availability set. We've actually done fundamentally the first 3 things. Now, what do we do next? We create the virtual machine, man. Yeah, that's what we do. Create the virtual machine. All right. All right. So everybody, go over here, top left-hand corner. Remember where it says all services, the hamburger button? Click on all services. And one of the very first ones that we have is actually virtual machines, right? Virtual machines. Go ahead and click on virtual machines. Okay, and then I want you to go to create, upper left-hand corner. And then we're going to hit virtual machine. And then we're going to get our wizard. Okay, all right. So fundamentally, this is where the rubber meets the road. Okay, we got a bunch of things in here. I want you to make sure you take special attention to and notes. Okay, so the first thing I want to and I'm going to bring Bruce in here. I'm going to ask him this question is, there's fundamental differences between building a server on-prem and building a server in the cloud. Fundamentally different. Okay, how you built it. And so let's talk about that for a second. So, Bruce, we've heard this a lot, and I'm sure you've gotten this before, where somebody will come to you and say, all right, Bruce, I have a server right here. It's virtualized. It's got 4 virtual machines on it. It's got, 10 CPUs, 20 gigs of memory, 40 gigs of hard drive space. I want a price on that in the cloud. What is the price for that exact same machine in the cloud? Give me that price. And then they're upset with the price because they're like, why is it so much more expensive? So tell me, does that happen to you?
They tend to overscale, I guess is what it comes down to. You need less memory and CPU out in the cloud, it seems, than on-prem. But the best way to know what you really need is by running tools and making, either A, leveraging some experience. So if you've run some things out in Azure, you'll note that, things like domain controllers, they can be run on, simple, I'll call it D1 processing units in terms of memory. And, those can cost you somewhere between $50 and $100 a month, rack rates, right? So you can either leverage experience, and certainly after time, you'll get some experience as to how you want to set up your file servers and domain controllers and SQL boxes and things of that nature. But really, one of the best ways we've seen to do this in mass is to run a tool over your server environment as it exists today. And effectively, it will ping the server and pretty much ask what resources it's using up over time. And so it will ping it now and ping it later, and it'll kind of provide some graphs and analysis for, it's very similar like setting up perfmon stats. There's about 6 or 8 different stats you certainly would want to monitor over a 2-week period. And over that 2-week period, you're going to see your peaks, valleys, highs, lows, and that tool, you can rely on the recommendation it's going to make, or you can make some tweaks to that tool's output at the end of a sampling period, such as 2 months, if that makes sense. So all of those things, I think, are part of the good guessing game. And do know, obviously, it's wise to start low, and you can always push the CPU and memory up over time, but you really don't want to overscale your Azure environment. You also want to have tools for, shutting down your servers when not in use, if indeed it's a service that is resilient like that. And then, I think you'll chat licensing and how to take advantage of licensing you might have to not pay for the full cost of the operating system when you might already own that license, things like that.
And I love that with that last statement, because let's think about a SQL server, okay? When you buy it and you have it on-prem, you run it 24 hours a day. Why? Because you can. You bought it, you licensed it, it's running 20. But if you really look at the telemetry of that SQL server, when it's really burning daylight, right? When it's really reconciling or whatever you're doing, it's probably 2-3 hours a day, okay? If you really look at the activity of it. So most people make the mistake of taking that application, that server, and say pulling up a SQL server and running it 24 hours a day in Azure. Now, the cost is astronomical, well, not astronomical, but it's a lot more than you think, right? It doesn't make sense. So the better way of doing it is to say, okay, I understand my application. I understand what I'm using, and say, well, how many hours a day do I need the SQL Server? This is how you think, okay? Okay, let's say I needed 3 hours a day. Okay, now you got 15 hours a week. You got 30, 60 hours a month, right? 720 hours a year. Okay, so what we do is we use this thing called reserved instance. We actually buy Microsoft SQL Server reserved instance over a year, and we say this is how many hours we want. That's kind of how you think about it. Okay, now you're going to get it at a deep discount, and it really starts to make sense. And that's the fundamental difference between buying an application that runs on-prem because you have the license, and then how you do it correctly inside of Azure. Okay, fundamental difference here is knowing your application and what it's going to take to run it and doing it in there. That's the biggest mistake that we see over and over and over again. So I'm curious, I'm going to throw out here another poll. I'm curious to see who here has actually uses reserved instances in their environment. I'm really curious. I'm going to go ahead and put it up here. If you can go ahead and vote for me. Are you currently using reserved instances in your cloud environment? So say yes, no, I'm not sure, like to know more. I'm going to go ahead and vote mine. Yes, no. Now, what's interesting, let's just get a few more votes here, because what I want to talk to you about something. We run the Azure Immersion workshops for Microsoft. So we do 36 sessions a month, and we polled over 2,000 people that we polled that used pay-as-you-go licensing. Basically did not know about this, and 90% of them didn't know about reserved instance or hybrid use benefit. So that's just, it's really important. So thank you on that. Really appreciate the polling results. It seems the same way. So a lot of you are not using it. Okay, so really important. After this call, we need to talk to you guys about how to actually implement that, because we can reshape what you're doing with just a few tools. All right. So let's get into this here. What are we doing? We're lifting and shifting. We're just creating a VM. Okay. So the first thing is we go to our resource group. No problem, right? Just attach it to. Let's see, where is my info tests? Okay. And then we need to give it a name. Okay. It's gonna be demo lab VM-01. Okay, I'll type that. I'll put that into the chat window. Oh, look at that. Dylan already did it. He's so good. He's so good. Man, he's just on top of that. Okay, region is West. Now, right below that, you're going to see other instant details in called availability options. Remember, we created that availability set. Remember that? So we come here and we use the drop-down arrow and we click on availability set. Okay. And then we click on when it says which one. Remember that one we just created? It's going to be automatically populated. Now, it's populated because we have the resource groups. It's kind of cool. Okay. Security type, we leave that standard. Okay. Now the image, this is an interesting stat here. The image is Windows Server 2019. If you click on that, you'll see a lot of Linux-based images. Now, a lot of people don't know the percentage of virtual machines that are Linux-based are over 52%. Isn't that crazy? That's a crazy stat. I always thought that it was like 90% Windows Server, right, or Windows type of thing, or data center. But no, it's actually Linux-based servers. Pretty cool. Okay, now we look at size. So it's really important you look at this piece. What I'm showing you here, this is the guidance that we give in Microsoft, is this is where you start. If you're starting any new like you start here at this particular size. There's a reason why. First and foremost, it doesn't cost you a lot, $305 a month, right? Secondly, at this level, it gives you access to all of the Azure resources. You can spin up smaller machines, but you may not be able to do some of the other cool stuff. So at this thing, this is where you should normally start. But what I want everyone to do is right below the size, there's this thing called See All Sizes. I want you to click that link. Okay. So now what this is showing us right now are the sizes that I've allowed, okay? But then there's also ones that are blocked by policy. As you can see that. That's actually kind of cool that they're doing that, blocked by policy. But what I want to show you here is what's nice about Microsoft is that they categorize it in VM sizes by letters. So all the D series, the A series, and the B series are general purpose. These are simple ones, right, that you can do. But as you scroll down, you're going to get to, let's say, the E series. Okay, all right, come on. A lot of D series here. Hold on. So E series, these are memory optimized. Okay, meaning that the CPUs are very small, but the memory is very big. So Microsoft's kind of nice that they did this. They're like, okay, hey, everyone's got a little bit different sizing requirement to start out, right? Depending on the application. So this is kind of where you go. And the very first thing I would do is I would look at the description. So these are memory optimized. If I scroll down, I have high performance compute, right? After memory optimized, I have storage optimized, right? We've got a lot of storage there. So just much easier to find places to start, okay? But for example, today we have the D4S V3, and that's the one we're going to go ahead and select. Okay, awesome. Now let's use the username. So the username is demo user, demouser. We're going to need to all be in the same vein here for when we connect, okay? And then the password will be capital PASSWORD.1 bang bang. Look at Dylan already put that in there. The conversation window, it's right there. Okay, so that's your username and you use a password. Awesome, awesome, awesome. Now, inbound port rules. Okay, we're gonna talk about that in a minute. But we want to put allowed selected ports. We want to allow RDP. Okay, so that we can get in. Okay, but that's it. We don't want to allow any other people to have access. Okay, we don't want to because we're still deploying this. We're going to create some rules. Okay, so leave that there, default. Okay, now we're going to talk about hybrid use benefit. This is another pro tip, and a lot of people don't know this. 90% of the people that pay as you go don't use this. So hybrid use benefit, what it basically says, Microsoft says, hey, look, and what I want you to do is look at your cost. See, my cost is $305.14. Okay, right, for the cost with the size a month, right? So Microsoft says this. They say, hey, they ask a question. Do you have your own server license? Do you have Windows 2012 R2 data center? Do you have that? Do you have software assurance with that? Is it on subscription? You say, yeah. You check this box because you already have the license, right? Now look at that. When you check the box, now look at the price. What happened to my price? My price went from $305 to $170. $305 to $170. Okay, that's if you already have the license. And then by the way, Microsoft also says if you're going to deploy Windows 2019 Data Center, we'll allow you to download a copy to replace your 2012 data center, and then you don't have to pay for another server license. This is huge. This 90% of people don't even know this, don't even use this, and it's frightening that it doesn't happen. So I'm going to launch another poll here. I'm curious to see who here has used the hybrid use benefit. Let me push that there. So I think we're going to find that I think what you're going to find here is that the responses are going to be pretty in line with what I'm talking about from the survey and the polls here. So let's just get a few more in here. Okay, so we have 5 responses, and just as I imagined, 71% of you said not sure, 25% said no, 1% one person said yes. That's right in line with one of these speed bumps that Microsoft has. They publish a lot about this, but they don't tell you. And if you bought through, you didn't buy through a CSP program, well, you didn't get the guidance. This is huge. You lose 49%. Just think of how much money you're throwing away right now. You literally open the wallet, just take some, throw it away, just take it out, throw it away. Just you throw it at Bruce, throw it at me,
Hey,
fun,
throw it. Yeah, it's kind of interesting because you know, power budgets, which used to run obviously on-prem data centers, you know, IT really didn't have to worry so much about those, right? They didn't come out of IT budgets; they came out of building and maintenance and so forth. But then, you know, when people started, you know, going out here, now you're paying for things, servers to be on, as an example, all night, and you're paying for, you know, licensings and computes and so forth. So it matters, I guess, as to what you choose, and certainly hybrid use benefit is one way to take advantage of that. Another one, I'll put this in your pro tip category, Sherman. The a lot of people when they're going to SQL licensing, and I know we're not going to jump into that today, but there's a really interesting capability to license SQL through the compute cost. So that choice that you make up above, you know, you can make a standard choice or, you know, whatever in terms of processing size, but you can also have it include the SQL license in the OS. So I'm going to give an example where a server might be, I don't know, let's say a file and print server. You might have at $200 a month, something like that. If you were to say, hey, I really want to load SQL services on this box, you can license that SQL through the CPU, and it might go from $200 a month to maybe $500 a month. But at that point, you're paying $300 a month for SQL, and anything you're running on that SQL server license, as well as the CAL, is included in that cost. So it's a runtime cost for SQL, which we found to be very beneficial for some applications where you've got some SQL needs, rather than getting into the complexity of SQL CALs and SQL Server licenses and so forth. You can build it right into compute, so it's kind of nice. Little tip for the back end.
That's awesome, and thanks everybody for voting. I really appreciate it. It's very interesting, you know, if you look at it. You know, we had 9 responses. Yeah, it's very interesting. And this is ultimately, we'll try to set up a call with you so that we can help understand like your environment, how to help you get that, take advantage of a hybrid use benefit. Okay, like this is like, why throw it away? Why give it to Microsoft? They're not going to tell you about it, right? So, all right, let's go to disks next, please. Cool thing about disks is that your OS disk is automatically provisioned for you, but we need to actually create a data disk. Now, I have anxiety about this all the time. I always like, you know, dream like, did I forget to add the data disk? Very simple. You click on that thing that says create a data disk. It's already created. They give you a name already. Source type, leave it alone, and then you just push OK. And then you're like, okay, cool. I got my data disk now. It's automatically put in there. All right, let's go next to networking, which is the next tab over. So this is really important. What's kind of cool about this is because we put that resource group, it brought in our virtual network that we already created, right? It brought in the subnet. It's going to create a new IP, okay, a new public IP for us. But what's really important here is see where it says network security group, okay? We want to click on advanced. This is pro tip number 6 or 7, one of those. The reason why we want to do this is we want it to create its own, and it's called a network security group that we're going to use that. And the reason why we want that is we want to be able to create inbound and outbound security port rules to get inside of our machines. If we don't have a group, we can't do that. Okay, so this is why it's so very, very important. You click on advanced, it automatically gives you demo lab VM-01-NSG. I'll show you that too in a second, why that's so important. Okay, now we're going to scroll through management, advanced, and tags because there really isn't anything that we're going to be doing today. Inside of that, management, you know, you could, if you had a firewall or Azure Active Directory, site recovery, you can put that in there, but we're not clicking, there's nothing in advanced that applies, nothing in tags. So what I want you to do is go over to review and create, run the final validation, it says validation passed, and then go to create. Okay, now, if anybody had a validation failed, please raise your hand. It'd be very simple. I can remediate most things in this lab with my eyes closed. So if you have that, raise your hand. If you're at the same screen I'm at, it says deployment is in progress, come back to this. Okay, Robert. Can you guys unmute Robert, please? Let me see if I can do that. 1 second, Robert, 1 moment. Okay, we've allowed your mic.
And what did you want me to do?
Oh, okay. So did you have any problem provisioning this, Robert? Or
I'm not sure where it went south, to be honest with you. We flew through the last few tags and maybe I missed a setting that I was supposed to do. But looking at my screen, it looks like it has a little red dot right above to the right of the basics on the review and create screen.
perfect. Okay, so click on basics. And it should be highlighting the area where you missed.
And it looks like it's squawking about I confirm I have an eligible Windows Server license, so I should check the box, I presume.
Check that, yeah, check, no, check that off. We'll undo it. I forgot to say that, sorry. Good.
When I had it undone is when there was an error. When I check it now, I don't see, it just says changing basic options may reset selections you have made, review options prior to creating the virtual machine.
Okay, so check both of those off. Where it says the hybrid use benefit, just make sure that they're both blank.
Okay.
Okay, and then you can go back to review and create.
It now has passed the validation.
Yes.
And it's creating.
All right, we need a GTG from the folks here.
Looks.
Fantastic, everyone. All right. So, Robert, you're in the deployment is in progress mode, correct?
That's correct.
Wonderful. You did a great job. Wonderful, wonderful. It's going to take us about probably five minutes for it to complete. It's just doing all the things that it needs to do. So in the meantime, why don't we go create our recovery services vault? Okay. So and what I mean by that, what a vault is basically a place where we're going to be backing up our images, our VMs, because Microsoft does give you an SLA if they go down, but if you go down for a reason, that bad actor or bad employee that did something wrong, you need to have an image. So I want everyone to go to the chat window, or not chat window, the search bar, okay? And I want you to type in RECO, Recovery Services Vault, okay? RECO. We'll click on that. And we're going to just add one really quickly. Just push create. And this is the simplest of all the things that we're doing. We're literally just putting it inside of our resource group. And we're giving it a name. RECO-01. Simple. And now we just go to review and create. Okay. So we're doing that. Now we've created a vault where when we do our disk backup, our VM disk backup, it's going to go into that vault, right? And it's going to hold. In this way, if we have a problem, one of our machines, we can always go back to the last time it was backed up. And backup is usually every night, okay? So we should all be deployed now. So I want everyone to go up to the top right-hand corner. There's a bell icon. Remember the bell icon? And I want you to scroll down to where it says deployment succeeded for your virtual machine and say go to that resource. So go to the bell, scroll 2 down. Second one should say deployment completed. Click on go to resource. And what you should do is you should be going to this is your virtual machine. Or you could go on the left-hand side, there's a menu bar on the left-hand side, it says virtual machines, you can find your VM in there, okay? But we should all be here. So on the overview page, kind of neat, tells you all the resource groups, operating systems, virtual machine, the different details, the public IP address that you have, and we can connect. And we're gonna do this in just 1 second, but I need to do 2 things before we do that. Okay. We're going to connect right here. We're going to get into our machine. Okay. So on the left-hand side in the menu bar, I want you to scroll down to where it says operations and it says backup. Now, please do not enable the backup. Okay. I'm just going to show you where it is. Okay. If you enable it, it's just a real pain for me because I've got to reset it. It takes a couple days. It's just, please don't do this right now. But I want to show you, okay, is in this situation, you would say select existing. This is the vault, and this is the backup frequency daily at 3 a.m. UTC. Okay, instant restore snapshot for 2 days. Retain backup taken every day at 3 a.m. for 30 days. These are your policies. Okay, that's what you would do. Now, just go ahead and push the top right-hand corner, the X button on that one. Okay, so what we want to do. I'm going to go back to my VM.
Backups are always interesting too, because people, oftentimes have a backup strategy already, right? They might have a, maybe an on-prem product, and they were like, well, how do I back up my Azure resource? So what he was showing there was something called Azure Backup. It's a service that's out there. It's kind of built on Azure, as you can imagine, uses their storage and so forth. But you certainly have capabilities to fold this into your backup strategy too. So, do you want to mess with 2 backup strategies or not? Is Azure Backup the right backup strategy to move to for other resources? And that's all part of a, discussion that needs to be had regarding how you envision this going, how quickly are you migrating, where are a majority of your workloads, where's your skill sets, things of that nature.
So that's perfectly put, 100%. So the next thing, we want to connect to the virtual machine. So if you somehow got out of your virtual machine, you're like, well, how do I get back? Remember, go up to the bell icon and go 2 down. This is why we love the bell icon. Go to that resource. Okay, then you'll be back at your virtual machine. Now I want everyone to push connect. We're going to do it through RDPs. Remember that port is open. We're clicking on RDP. We'll download the RDP file. Okay. Just go to the blue button, big blue button says download RDP file. I'm clicking on the opening and I'm going to just push connect. Okay, now remember our credentials, and Dylan, if you can put them back up there, it's demo user. Now don't put in your current ones like to your office, password.1 bang bang. We're going to connect to demo user with that password. They can't identify the identity of the computer. Obviously, it's brand new. Okay, we haven't really published anything yet. So push yes. And then, as Captain Chaos would say in Cannonball Run, dun 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 dun. You should be done. I don't know if you guys. This is one of those special movies my dad, watched with me. I kind of remember, But yeah, I mean, this is it, man. We did it. So if you got into this page, congratulations, to that. Now, I have this strange anxiety that I always do, and I'm not afraid to admit it, but I always, my first thing I check is to make sure I actually added the data disk. Can't tell you how many times I may have forgotten it. So I'll just go to File Explorer. I'll just make sure that we got something in there. It's not just the OS disk. So yeah, that's what we did. We did it. So
it's in an availability group. It's got, or it's in a resource group. It's got availability options that were evaluated. You've got a CPU assigned. You're saving some money because I think you're using hybrid use. All of those good things.
All those good things. So
how do you do that at scale? Well, and what is your backup options? And does this need antivirus protection and things like that? All of these questions and more tend to be part of something that we walk through with our customers, and I'll show you now, which is something called a Cloud Journey Workshop. And hopefully you're seeing my screen now. Basically, it's 3 phases for us. It's a relatively quick process, but customers, when they dabble in Azure, usually want more, and they want to know how they can get involved. And so we kind of meet them where they are. We'll, step 1, discovery, right? Looking around. How do you back up today? What workloads do you have? What antivirus are you using? Do you own Azure already? Do you have items up there? What's your connectivity going to be? What kind of firewall do you have to provide that connectivity? One of the things we didn't talk about is, oftentimes this is an extension of your network. And so today your network, if it needs to communicate with the cloud, is usually going to communicate not through a dedicated channel, but in fact through a site-to-site VPN. And that site-to-site VPN might be, your firewall establishing, and so it has to be patched and up to date and supported and things of that nature so that a VPN can be connected up to Azure. Or maybe that world up there in Azure is going to exist by its own and you're just going to RDP into it when you need it. It's a test dev environment or it's a backup environment. So we need to kind of discuss what your goals are for Azure, and that's all part of discovery. And then furthermore, design. And it's in design where you're making decisions regarding, toe, foot, or full leg, things like that. How are you going to support this? Are you going to move to Azure Backup instead of your current backup system? Things of that nature. And we need to evaluate your servers, right? The workloads that you're talking about moving up there, potentially lifting or shifting, are part of that report and output. So I would normally stop there. I mean, and we provided some guidelines as to, how much time you're looking at in terms of for environments that are relatively small, such as things that are less than 50 servers. We've got customers that, simply just want to put backup up there and are looking for an immutable offsite storage location. Very simple need, to organizations that are thinking of lifting and shifting and getting out of the data center business when they've got 12 servers and 50 users. I mean, that's all possible either way, and try to design our cloud journey workshop to meet your needs and your capabilities. But in general, as to what the output looks like, you get one output: knowledge and kind of confidence with regards to jumpstarting your world. But secondly, you get a report. The report is going to lay out risks, costs, and options, and might look something like this. Here's a table of contents as an example from one that we've provided. We've done this for organizations that have, a couple thousand servers, and they wanted to get started with a pilot, to organizations that have 3 servers and want to, extend their backup out there for immutability. Looking at security items, we're looking at, we're running that tool, presumably over some servers to determine what workloads. Really, a lot of people get focused on costs, right? What's this going to cost me? Not only, like, let's say it's for disaster recovery. Disaster recovery, they actually have a very elegant solution where you can put agents on servers and you can just take your server like a VM and simply synchronize it up to the cloud every 15 minutes, every 30 minutes, every hour. And so after the initial sync, you're literally just doing deltas, and this is done being done at a VM level. So you could have a very easy per server Azure VM DR plan that's $25 per month, okay, per server. And then they provide you the console up there, the storage up there. And so you could, just calculate, hey, I have 10 servers. All right, $250 a month for a DR plan at a second site. That's kind of one of the reasons why it's popular. But then if you had a disaster recovery, or if you had a disaster rather, you're going to be running those servers and you're going to be turning them from inactive to active up in the cloud. What's that going to run? What's your run cost for those 10 servers per hour or per day? And we can provide you those as part of the Azure estimates. So all of these things are possibilities. DR is certainly, again, a big use case for where organizations are looking at this, as well as backup and kind of the all-in strategy. Saying a lot of words, but I guess trying to just give you confidence that, all of these things can be looked at. This is a journey, if you will, this cloud journey workshop that I'm going to say at this point 20, 30, 40 customers have gone through as they, begin their efforts up into the cloud.
Now, what I love about this too, Bruce, is the first call, just like for expectations, we want to talk to you about helping optimize either your current environment or help you with maybe you want to go, but optimization, saving you money. We've educated you on the hybrid use benefit, reserved instance. There's a lot of things that we take a look at, but frankly, I don't want people to be scared. It's not going to be your first call with us is not going to be a bring your credit card type of
No.
thing. It's really just a conversation. It's just a continuing this, but be in a little bit more private setting. So that's pretty much it. So if you just want to say to further discussion, you want to give us a yes on that, knowing that we're, it's just a further conversation, kind of see what's going on. I typically start those calls with, hey, tell me about your projects currently and tell me about what are the roadblocks, like what are you seeing there first? That will help us get to where, you need to be really, right? And just talk, because there's so many different ways to do this, and sometimes it's just not not feasible. Sometimes it is feasible. Sometimes there's things to work on. So any last vote on that? So I want to just open it up for questions. How do you guys did you guys like the session today? Was it worth your time? I know some of you guys are intermediates. You can go to the chat window. Is there any other questions that you want us to talk about? Anything else you want us to show you?
I definitely appreciate everyone attending. I think there's a lot of value in it, and at least if nothing else, getting over sometimes the confidence hump, just seeing the console, hearing other perspectives as well as peers with this nebulous concept of a resource group or availability set. It sounds fancy, but then you look at it, you're like, oh yeah, it makes sense. Put some 4 items in a resource group so I can manage them together. And roles-based access, oh, that's no different than I do in Active Directory today, things like that. So there are some challenges, but a lot of things are very similar to what you might have experienced in the past. So,
Robert, since we allowed you to speak, if you don't mind, just calling you real quickly. Did you finish out? Were you able to provision the machine and get in? I'm just curious.
I was not able to do the RDP connection, and it gave me 3 reasons why. So it said, one, that RDP connection was not allowed, and I can't remember what the other ones were. So
probably per your company policy.
That's what I was guessing. Yeah, I'm not 100% certain, but I thought that could be it. So
we've had that happen before.
I had the RDP selected when you were going through the various settings there.
Uh-huh.
So yeah, I didn't want to interrupt the rest of the group. So.
How did you like this session? I mean, was it worth your time? Do you feel, Robert? I'm always curious. Just a little bit of feedback would be great.
Well, it was, and I use actually Peters and Associates. I've got the Pulse agreement, for some support. Plus, I have a contractor, Eric King, that we're using right now on a part-time basis. And so, my goal is, it's been a number of years since I was a hands-on the keyboard guy, and so I'm far removed. I'll date myself a little bit. There was no cloud back in the day. It was all on-prem or data centers that you had your equipment at, and so I just wanted to bring my understanding up a little better. So this was good. Obviously, it was fast-paced. So I did pick up a lot, though, and I think you put out some, good tips for some of the folks. You certainly piqued my curiosity with, several of those things, particularly around licensing, and then, there's a lot of review that we need to do, regarding this. There's, I could see where it could be easy to make some missteps and leave yourself vulnerable. And then, you certainly might not be as efficient. I'd be interested in knowing, too, what type of, monitoring and alerting and things like that it can expose to a user. So.
Well, thank you for that feedback, Robert. I think that's exactly what we were hoping to achieve today, is to pique the curiosity of looking at some of these things, because there's, you don't see it, right? And that's really fantastic to hear. There are some cost optimization tools. There are some budgeting that is really important to understand too. So yeah, when you talk to your person at Peters, maybe just kind of bring up some of those things, and they'll be happy to kind of review them with you.
Yeah, no, absolutely will. In fact, right now I'm going to have a meeting with Bob Armstrong and Bob Peruzzo. And so
the Bobs.
Yes. But, yeah, and I'm a Bob too, so we got.
All right, that's a fun meeting.
3 Bobs.
No, but thank you, Sherman and Bruce. Nice to talk to you live. I've attended many of your this month in security. Those are very helpful as well. So thank you both.
You're welcome. Well, thank you for coming. Thank you everybody else for coming. Really do appreciate it.
Thanks all.
Goodbye.
Yeah, we're going to end the lab here. Give you back your time. Thanks again, everyone. Appreciate it. And look on the lookout for other events. We do security and Power Platform. We do other things too. But thanks again. Have a great day. Thank you, Bruce, for having us.
Right. Thanks.
Bye.